Hi, I'm Anna from Homebound Happy Hour, and today we are making something spectacular. It is called the Old Sage Cocktail, originally created by cocktail dudes. So, just a little insight into why I chose this. This drink calls for, well, one, I've been itching to use the Chartreuse because I just cracked this bottle and have not gotten a chance yet. And then two, we got a really special bottle of gin. And this is going to be instead of an Old Tom style gin. So this is a local to San Diego where we reside, Old Harbor. It's a mezcal barrel aged gin. And so that means basically they age it in the same barrel that a mezcal would have been. So it retains some of that smokiness and that sweetness that a mezcal might have. All right, so just to get started, I am going to go ahead and start squeezing the limes for our lime juice. Now this calls for 3/4 ounce per drink, and as you may or may not know, I always make 2 drinks because there are 2 of us on the podcast, Homebound Happy Hour. So every week I make a new drink for me and Andy. Andy being my co-host and husband. So it looks like, since there are 3/4 ounces per drink, that this one giant juicy lime is going to get us right where we need to be. Yeah, that's just right there. Perfect. That's an 1.5 ounces. And then the recipe calls for a couple of sage leaves. I'm going to do 3 or 4. Let's do 4. So this is just fresh sage. It's like got that velvety texture. Smells so nice. And then the recipe calls for you to cut it in half and muddle. I'm just going to kind of bruise it with my bar spoon a little bit, although the end can be used for that also. The recipe that they wrote says violently muddle, but I don't want to do that. I'm not a very violent person. So I'm going to add our 3 ounce or 1.5 ounces of lime juice on top of that sage. This calls for 1/8 of an ounce of agave. I'm going to use organic agave 5. It's basically a low carb version, low glycemic, meaning very little sugar. So that's, for 2, that's 1/4 ounce. Then, got our Chartreuse. This is 0.75 ounce per drink, so I'm going to just go ahead and do 1.5 ounces. This is a yellow Chartreuse. There are a couple varieties, but the most common 2 are going to be yellow and green. And the difference is really just the yellow is a touch sweeter and not quite as earthy. So it has a little bit of almost a banana flavor to it, but I wouldn't say it's banana flavored. All right, and then our special mezcal barrel aged gin. That gets 1.5 ounces per drink. And you see it's like a nice tea color. So 3 ounces. And also you'll see that I'm putting it into a mixing glass today rather than the tin that I normally like to shake with. And that is how this recipe was intended by cocktail dudes. So I'm just following their instructions, adding ice here. And then we're just going to stir that up. The idea being you're not bruising your gin, even though there is citrus and you can shake it. I'd like to serve it as intended by the cocktail dudes. So you just want to get a nice chill on your liquid. It doesn't have to be stirred for a very long time. I like my drink really cold though, so I'm going to go ahead and just keep going. Keep it rolling. And the sage getting stuck on the sides a little bit, so wiggle that around. I think that's probably pretty good. And then like before, I just pop the strainer right on top of this, although you don't have to use anything special or fancy. That's just, I'm working with what I have, you know, and you don't have to go out and buy things to make drinks like this. Goes straight into a coupe. You can use a glass, you can use, you know, a mason jar to shake. You don't have to buy a lot of things to make this happen. A little more in this guy. Now I could have done a double strain just to make sure that none of the sage leaves got in there, and just a little bit did. But also you can scoop with your bar spoon too. And then you're going to garnish with a sage leaf on each one. We've talked about before, I'm not a big fan of garnish, but something simple and sweet like this really makes it look nice. So that is the Old Sage Cocktail by Cocktail Dudes, and now by Anna of Homebound Happy Hour. Cheers.